hair at this point. I'm about ready to shave my head. All righty. So, I played a little bit with the map maker today. I got the chance. So, I mean, I feel like I wasted a whole day doing not much else. But to be fair, I did spend some time doing some cooking. I should probably get some of the rest of that put away. So yeah, today's not a standard just me doing creative things. It's just sort of like a rambling blog, I guess. I guess that's just going to be the way it's going to be until I get some things figured out. I do have to, I'm debating whether I just give my notice at work and just stop. Because there are things I want to do, and I'm not able to do them. And I want to be able to just do what I want to do. I did play around with a little bit more of the French toast today. I used other candies to make syrups to put over top of them. But I finally used up that loaf of bread that was going stale. I didn't want it to go bad, so I've used it up now. It's no longer something I have to use up. So that's good. And did some brainstorming about my main campaign setting that I've been working on. And played around with some mythology. But the other thing I tried to do, I did an install and just a preliminary look around at this. And took a look. It's kind of interesting. I think it's really going to be contingent on whether or not I can build my own brushes for it. I guess we'd call them brushes. But yeah, I mean, I can think of a few ways I could do something drastically different with this than what they think you would do with it. I think some of it's going to be contingent on how much I can mess around with it. Because I was looking at the rule books, I guess the instruction manual. So, symbol management and creation. This chapter explains how to choose sets of symbols and insert symbols into your drawings. It also shows you how to create symbols of your own using. Which, I mean, the English on that makes me suspicious. If you still can't find the symbol you want, you can create your own. Anything drawn in CC2 Pro can be converted into a symbol. That's a tricky one. Drawing anything in CC2 is one thing. Can I take something that I like in the outside world, say like I wanted to add a wood grain texture? Could I take my camera, point it at a piece of wood, take a picture, and then convert that picture into an image file that CC2 can use? If so, then I'm going to have a blast coming up with ideas. So that's Diorama Pro. I don't want Diorama Pro. That's something else entirely. Okay, so labeling your maps, finishing touches, editing in CC2 Pro. Editing many entities at once, making a selection, using templates, symbol management and creation. Where's the drawing option? I know it's something I could do something with. As a drawing program, it's not too dissimilar from MS Paint. So even then, I could have some fun just doing a challenge to see if I could create a piece of artwork with it. Mountains, rivers, Forests. Okay, so forests, labeling your map. Draw like. What is that? 40. So, yeah. So, the current color is brown, the layer is structured. It says to go to 40 for that instruction, but that's halfway through a page. Oh, labeling your map. Text. Setting a default text properties. Draw like. The draw like feature lets you choose a piece of text or other entity and immediately start drawing a similar entity. How? That's curious. I wish it would stop automatically opening to that page. Drawing. Value of maps, copyright issues, zooming, layering, printing, more on printing. I will have to probably use a mouse rather than the touchpad that I have, because I don't think the touchpad is going to be particularly great for fine control. Okay, so simple meandering river. Okay, what do we got? Text, finishing touches, rows, navigating lines, navigation lines. I'm curious about that actually. Do they have the wind direction ones? Yes, it looks like, ooh, that'll be fun. I could play with that a little bit. So, yeah, I've been playing around with that today. Did the install, got it up and running, did a preliminary mess around. I think it's really going to come down to what does it take to get self-made art into the program to see what I can do with it. Because, I mean, the art that's existing in the program is limited, and it's not my usual style. But if I could take my own works and turn them into stamps. Yep. I installed it and was playing with it. I think the limits the limits of it currently seem to be that it has very rudimentary artwork for it, and I want to see what I can do with it. And some of that is like this chapter in the book talks about symbol management and creation, and I'm sure that wasn't legible at all. So it says symbol management and creation. And it says, if you still can't find the symbol you want, you can create your own. Anything drawn in CC2 Pro can be converted into a symbol. Now, using the drawing program is about as skilled as MS Paint works have been. So there's a part of me that wonders how easy it might be. Like, could I do some photography of wood grain and then put that image and well, that's what I'm curious about is, like, if I could take wood grain, or if I go for a walk in a local a few local sites where I know I can get like a pea gravel walkway. If I get a close-knit color palette, so it won't be true to life accurate, but it'll be at least as good as a children's book picture can be, like an illustrated children's book or even a comic book. So I should be able to at least get that degree of color toning. And if I can use some simple photo manipulation to get varying textures, that would be cool. Can I load those in and then use them as the symbols in the map making? So like that pea gravel walkway, if I can get a simple color downgrade pattern to that and then load it into a program and save it as a format of file that CC2 can upload. I don't know what formats it can take. If I could do that and convert them over to a symbol that the map maker can make, I could do some amazing stuff with this. It depends on how big a suite of symbols I can build. Because if I have the option to build entire custom folders full of custom patterns, I could do a lot with this. Not just map making. I could make some interesting artworks. One of the things I'm curious about is I do some paper modeling on occasion, where I can take cardstock that I want on it and fold them into three-dimensional models. I think I could have some real fun with that if I can upload custom textures that I don't have to fabricate in the program, but can import and modify in the program. I think that's the important thing. And that's for texture, like the wood of the door here. That might be an interesting texture to be able to apply to wood materials. And you can do it from a distance. It's sort of like playing with the sound effects that we played with when we were doing the audio stuff. This time it would be photographic textures. Like, could I set up a small photographic booth with pieces of fresh broccoli in it, zoom in and use them as images of certain types of foliage? Could I do a curly leaf kale? Could I do, like, what kinds of things could I theoretically alter and modify to make interesting textures and patterns to use in Campaign Cartographer that I can then, because one of the things it looks like I should be able to do, it has patterns for doorways and roads and stuff like that. So I should be able to do sort of like a town or a village. So if I do that, I might be able to lay out my lines, basically make my individual symbols something that I can put out in a pattern and make even certain symbols for the glue tabs on a card model, and just stack them out in a way that lets me print them out on here to give like cobblestone or wood grain texture to card modeling, that I can make things for video ideas or stuff like that. And one of the things that I think would be kind of fun is if I could do the textures of certain fabrics and do some card modeling of some very simple puppetry. And I don't want to call it puppets, but very simple figures of like a very blocky character, and then using my video editing software, do a tracker. So like I in one of my video edits, I think it was Fubar Labs in New Jersey in Roving Jack channel, that I had a person at that lab who didn't want to be in the videos. So I put the face blur that tracked her as she moved through the shot. So tracking her face was the trick. You get you put a marker and say, track this thing as it moves across the frame and blur it out. If I do the same thing where I can build a puppet rig, a puppetry rig with very simple stick figure with hinge joints, but bright color markers at designated locations around the body, I can then set it up as a framework that I can move. Yeah, and that's sort of like, I think there are a lot of I I think there are a lot of fun things I could do with that if I can figure out the mechanisms. And I haven't really sat down yet because I don't have the tools. I think I need a mouse is what I need. I have the touchpad on this computer that moves the mouse around or the cursor around, but I think for the definite controls that I need, or maybe I'm selling it short. I do have a pen with a stylus tip. I wonder if using the stylus tip on the control panel. So let me try something to see what kind of range across the whole screen moving across the entire touchpad does. Okay, so I can move from a corner to the exact center by going from one corner to another on a touchpad. So I got about a quarter of the screen's width that I can travel. Yeah, and it's definitely wider than it is tall. So yeah, I think it's probably, if you split my screen into the 9 spaces, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, that's roughly what you would fit for the touchpad on here. So I could potentially use a stylus on the touchpad and see what I could achieve with it. I think it's just as easy to go get a cheap mouse, plug it in as an external peripheral, and see if I can use that to do some things. It gives you a finer control too, I think. The touchpad is not a fine control device. But with a mouse, and once I crack the code on making my own symbols, I do think I can make card models. I also think it would be interesting to do like blueprints for some of my designs, and maybe not even just like, I've looked at doing tiny houses and greenhouses and home decor and home design stuff, where you could build a craft room ideally set up for what you need it to do. I could theoretically use it also to do design elements for like bullet journals, like we've talked about before, and I could theoretically use it as a way of laying out blueprints for mechanical projects. If I can replace, say, cobblestone street with circuit diagrams, like I could diagram out a circuit on here, print it out on some stuff on the printer that lets me adhere it to a circuit board and etch that in stuff for building stuff. But that's, I mean, there's not a lot of difference between a road path, like a road map, and a circuit diagram if you have the ability to make some custom road designs. So the pad that you're going to use to solder in a like a capacitor in a control circuit, that's a road map. The point where the capacitor goes on between 2 roads is a site where you would put a bridge. The capacitor becomes the bridge. So you could very well use Campaign Cartographer as a rudimentary circuit building diagram. Yeah, I mean it's graphics currently are a little dated and they are pixelated, but I don't think that's necessarily a hardcore limit on everything. I mean, people play Minecraft, and Minecraft is not high graphics by any stretch of the imagination. And making maps with it is also something I can do. Some very simple maps. I don't know if the base setup that comes here has stuff for the cities, or if that's predominantly an expansion pack. I've looked at the expansion packs partly because I did want to look at the what was the other one? The Diorama Pro command references, or the Diorama Pro introduction. What? There we are. So that one I was curious about, but the sense I have for this is that all of that is really just add-ons that you can put into this program. They're not separate programs necessarily by themselves. So there's ways I can achieve some of those same effects just playing around. But I do notice with some of the brushes that I call them brushes because that's what a lot of programs call them these days. But I do recognize the symbols are a very kind of a pixelated, grainy symbol. So they remind me a lot of the old icons for desktops on old Macs. And they have a tendency to look like they're bitmapped is what they are, is really what I should say. They're bitmapped images. They're not like a raster or anything like that. But that's fine. That's not a huge deal. I mean, if it really comes to it, if I want to make a highly detailed version of something that I can do, I could do a knockoff version on here quickly with the campaign cartographer, print it out, and use a light table with fine art equipment to paint or blend or do the things that the program itself won't do, using this as a foundation. This is sort of like being able to make it's like making your own coloring books. Like if you can get the thing that you can then color in by hand, I can get a finer gradient of color blending than the program could necessarily do by hand. And all I have to do is print the lines that I would color inside of on paper that I could then color in with colored pencil. I could do something like that. The other thing I'm wondering about is like some of that pixelated quality comes from the symbols being a certain size. But if you zoom out, that pixelation disappears. Now, if you can make larger size symbols to use, and it looks like you can. From my brief playing with it, there were some symbols that were like this big, and then there were some symbols that printed this big. So if you could take this image and use that symbol, and I have to keep using the term they use that symbol, and then step back so that it's this big, then you're going to have a loss of that bit mapping, that graininess around the edge. It's not going to be a perfect resize, but it'll be good enough that if you wanted to get highly detailed images, you probably could find a way to do it just by zooming out further. Part of that may simply be that if you get to a certain level of size resolution, you may have to make larger objects out of multiple pieces and put them together like a puzzle. But yeah, it's doable. There's a fair amount you can get away with doing this, and I'd be curious to see like just how much I can bend it. Because years ago, I made a deck of cards as a Star Wars fan. Um, I was so far into it that I got into. Yeah, the URL did show up, so I can take a look at that. But as I was saying, a few years ago, I was doing. I was big into Star Wars, and I got into game design stuff. And there's a game in Star Wars called Sabak, which is the game that Han Solo won the Millennium Falcon with, or Sabak, however you want to say it. And I designed my own deck of cards. Whoop. And part of the deck design that I used, I took images from some of the Star Wars movies and edited them to make the right images that I wanted for my cards, my card design. And the program I used for doing that was a very simple, I believe it was, I believe it was ClarisWorks, which was a word processing program for Macintosh computers. And so I used that program to use an imaging piece of software that was intended for editing charts and images that you embed in documents that you wanted to print out. And I used that program to take the backdrop of places like Naboo from a still image on the web of the movie scenes. And then I took images of characters, went around the edges of the characters and cleaned up the edges, and put them into or overlaid them on top of the cityscape. And then most of them did not have lightsabers or things like that that were lit that you could use. And so I built the image of a lightsaber pattern, and then I built borders and frames around them. I did all of this in a piece of software that was never really meant to do it. And I pushed the edge of it, and it looked pretty good. Like, I'm sure if I looked at them today, I'd go like, wow, that's some pretty rough artwork. But, for the time, I was doing things with a piece of software that was meant to be a word processing program editor. And I was doing things that a lot of people didn't really start to do until they did photo manipulation with Photoshop. So I do feel like, to a certain degree, I might be able to get away with doing more than this program is intended to do if I can learn it well enough to know what things I can bend and twist. So yeah, I pulled up that website, see if I can take a closer look. So Dungeon Design City Designer helps you lay out or detailed urban areas. So Cosmographer and Perspective was one I was curious about, and the dioramas I was curious about. But all of these are the ones meant for version 3. I believe this is version 2. I'd be very curious to see if I could find the plugins for version 2 at a cheaper rate, because the software is no longer dominant. Okay, so now imagine your city design 3 as well. You start with the same road layout, but you have the choice of symbols and an array of styles, which you can. Yeah, it sounds like really most of these add-on packets are literally just folders full of graphic types. They've made this, it sounds like, and maybe I'm misjudging this. The It looks like a lot of this is just somebody gave you a different set of stamps. Oh yeah, 22 is the current price. I'm kind of curious about the dioramas 3. Dioramas 3. Let's take a look at what I mean. It really looks like that's what I'm really kind of saying along here is like I don't see anything in the images that I see here of what things like diorama for version 3 can do that I couldn't potentially do if I can. I mean, the graphics are definitely better for version 3 than 2. But loading up diorama 3 is 39.95 is the cost. So, like, I'm pretty sure I can achieve that effect without having to upgrade or pay for any more software. So let's see, what do we got? City of Designer 3. And there's nothing to tell me here what makes them think that I couldn't do this on my own. Because it looks like really what they've done is they've built you the program that lets you make art or make maps, and then they're selling you a set of stamps that you can use. But the base software lets you make your own stamps. So really, if I can get it to do what I want it to do, I might just be able to make more to my interests than what their software is. So what do we got? Plugin power. Yeah, no. I'll let you know how much I believe that. It says here, the add-ons are separate from CC because we want to give you a choice. If you don't need card models, don't get Diorama Pro. If you rarely create urban areas, you don't need CD3. No, that we're fully aware of this. The idea that you made these because you could sell individual packets. That's not you personally, but so that's the thing is like I doing something like the stellar cartography and like let's go with stellar cartography for right now. I could almost guarantee you if I'm able to make my own symbols for the map making, there's absolutely no reason why I can't set the base color for my map to black and then set a symbol of the planet Saturn and a sun map, like the solar storm image, as a sun on the map, and from there set that out as the center of a solar system movement, or set something up as just like a small symbol for the solar system, instead of using like the maps we have here. They give you a green, grassy, or a brown dirt background. If I can make my own background where it's black, or a black with a starscape on it, and I set onto that black background with a starscape the symbols they want for cities, or the symbols they want to give you for a coat of arms for a government in that area. Those are two things you can do on a map. If I can turn one of those coat of arms or one of those city symbols into a symbol for a stellar empire or something to that effect, I can make my own stellar maps. I don't need their permission to do that. One of their other pieces of software lets you do maps of the interior of boats and spaceships. Or I think those are two different sets of their software. But if I can take a picture of the interior of a toolbox and get a rusty metal interior, I can make an iron battleship if I just use the textures to lay out certain shaped objects. And so, like, I really think, like, Their add-ons don't seem to be adding any functionality or software capability for most of them. Now I'm not so sure about some of them, where some of the building based ones give you a perspective. I think it's actually one of them is called perspective add-on. And the perspective add-on lets you take it from a top down view and crank it to a perspective shot. I don't think I could get away with trying to achieve that in this program as it exists now. That might be one that's worth exploring. But even the card modeling, the one that lets me build sets and designs, I'm pretty sure all I would need to be able to do is have textures, be able to lay out different shapes in those textures. So if I get the wood grain, can I build a Pinocchio puppet? I could probably do that. I could build a puppet if I just understand from the get-go the geometry of the thing I'm going to fold in the end. And part of that can just be I can do some hard paper modeling of a humanoid shape out here, then unfold it, scan that pattern of that shape into a visual document, and use that scan to build symbols that I can texture with the wood grain and therefore make a wooden human shape. I could totally do that. I'm pretty sure I can get away with doing that. If I can build my own textures and I can build my own symbols for the map, I could do a map that is just a map of the flat outlay of the object I want to create. So I wouldn't have to buy the diorama setup. And once I've built the flat outlay of the images, you can print them out and then you can fold them up. Like I said, the only thing I think you can't do that with is the perspective and maybe the figure drawing. There still may be a way to do the figure drawing because they have a character designer, which is kind of a lame character designer. But it is essentially paper dolls is what they're doing. And I don't think there's any reason why I couldn't make a set of symbols for, or I could do the, what I was looking at earlier. They have a roof tile. Yeah. None. Because I think for me, not only is it more cost effective to not buy the add-ons, but it's a fun little challenge to see, like, okay, how much can I achieve through my own creations in this program? So can I take a program that is the base program, and if you want to do a character design, it'll cost you $30 more for the add-on. Can I do the same thing, or in some cases, even better than using just the base program and some creative ingenuity? And I'm willing to bet you I could. So let's see if I can pull up the, where's the character designer? So the character designer, there we go. The character designer may have some functionality that would be harder to do, but they give you a figure like that, and you can make custom armor sets go over top of it and put an item in each of their hands or something like that. So that customization, yeah, the camera's just freaked out and it's not going to settle back down. The character customization that you can achieve with that, I would be willing to bet you if I can build my own symbol sets, I could get a better looking sword, a better looking bow, better looking armor. And if I'm essentially building a map of the human body and saying this building of a sword fits in this location, it's the same thing. Yeah, and that's essentially like, I'm pretty sure I can build a whole set of the like, basically, if I give myself an afternoon, I'd be willing to bet you I could build a character builder. Oh, come on, you can fix that. Come on. I'm willing to bet you in an afternoon I could build a set of symbols that would let me character build just as well as their program is, give or take a little bit in some areas. I might be able to do better. It looks like their character builder doesn't have the ability to do dynamic posture, whereas I might be able to do that. And it depends on how big a library I want to build. Like, I can imagine, honestly, if you took some of those, like, how to draw characters learning books, and you just copy the images of the human figure directly into, I could get profile, on front, and even a perspective shot that you could use to build characters around. And from there, I could build outline structures that would fit on, like, if you've ever seen the old paper dolls that little girls used to play with, where you'd have a pop-out doll figure completely tracing the outline of the body, and then you have these pieces of clothing with tabs that fold over on the sides and back that fit over that and wrap around and hold onto the body so that you can dress them in different outfits. That's essentially what you're doing on a digital form with that program down there. And so, like, building paper dolls, like, if you can build it on paper with pencils and scissors, it sounds like I should be able to do it on here with some, an afternoon worth of creative work. And just building a template, heck, I could probably draw everything I want to do, scan it, and if I can get it into CC2, that's the biggest hurdle. Getting past the has to be in CC2 format. But I mean, it does also feel like that the program, again, is an older program that doesn't have like, with certain types of image editing software, I'm sure you've seen it, where if you expand the images, you get these big square pixels, and if you contract the images, they get grainy too, because the fold of a curve doesn't stay smooth when it's compressed on both axes. It gets lumpy. So there's likely to be some of that, but I mean, that's not the worst situation in the world. You can work around that. It's what I worked around when I did my ClarisWorks Sayback deck. It's just a few little tricks. I think the thing I'm most curious about are what are some of the capabilities that are tricky that you might not think are abilities of the program. The thing that made ClarisWorks work so much better than something like a MS Paint was ClarisWorks offers you the opportunity to tint a section. So what I would do was I would make a geometric form, basically like if I made a spaceship window port that you're looking out over a planet and a sun in the background, but I wanted it to look like it was frosted glass, I could tint it white and dial in how much tinting I did so it looks like a frosted glass pane that you're looking through out into space. I did the same thing for some reflection type effects, where if you take an image and you overlay a tinting to dull the color, usually it would be like you'd do a tinting it black, and so it would darken it enough so that the image looks thin. And then you could go over top of that with another tinting in certain areas to add something on our side, or do a piece of artwork in front of it. And so you could do a variety of things just with this one tinting feature. There was another art program I played with as a kid that had this blend feature. So you could take this very grainy, usually they have like a spray paint can that you can run a streak and it has this speckled spray. If you did that in 3 different colors and then you used a blend feature over top of it, that blend feature actually made more nuanced textured color on a smoother gradient. And like, that's not what it's intended for, but that's what I used it for. And I'm wondering what features this program has that are similar to that. That, like the map making, could I change, could I do like, what is the program? There's not a program. There's if you've ever seen the police profilers, the ones who you go in there and you describe a suspect to them and they make an illustration of the suspect. If I can make my own symbol sets based off of the eyes, nose, mouth, ears, hairline, and some other basic features of a human face, I could build a profile art for a human face and make a variety of facial patterns that you could use as a close-up picture for character design for stories. And that's just one set of possibilities I can do with symbols. You can do body types theoretically. Like, I don't know how far I can push this, but it looks like I could reasonably take this pretty far. The images are going to be kind of grainy, but again, that may just be a factor of how big I make the picture and how much I can step back to make the resolution not catch as much of that grainy detail. So I think I could do a fair amount with it as I play with it. I think it would be fun to see. I don't know if OBS would let me use it to record my screen while using that software. I think that might be a heavy load for the operating system. But if I can get that to work, it would be fun to maybe do a series of projects to see what I could do with the program. Because I'm thinking like making maybe even just very simple puppetry, very simple sets. So I could build backdrop sets. Like, one of the things, it sounds stupid, but bear with me. One of the things I'm contemplating doing with it is, it's not quite card modeling, but I could make a pop-up book, like a children's pop-up book. If I can build the essentially blueprints of the components, print them out on cardstock, fold them in the right way, and glue them into a folding book so that when you open the book, they pop up. That would be immensely fun to do. I could build pop-up book patterns. And I could do it for a line of gift cards or greeting cards for friends and family. I could potentially do a fair amount with it. And now here's where it gets even more interesting. Now imagine taking a hand plane and taking thin shavings of wood that are paper thin, laying them out as components that then you can glue together in pop-up versions so that you have, say, a jewelry box. And it might be harder on the grain of a wood to do that, but I'm curious enough to want to try it. So you could make a wooden box or a puzzle box or something where you pull something and something else changes shape or position because it's like a pop-up book. You know, the books you open up, and as you open it, the castle folds out, and you pull a tab and something moves over the top of the castle. That's something you can do with pop-up books. If I could do it with paper, I might be able to get away with doing it with wood shavings. And so making really interesting art pieces that way, based off of patterns I can build potentially in Map Maker. So that's just like one thing I could do with it off the top of my head. I could use it for designing layouts for jewelry designs. I could use it for making circuit patterns for building electronics. I could do it for building blueprints for building the case for making tools or other things for tinkering. Like if I want to build a desktop lathe meant for working soft materials. So if I want to take a candlestick I buy at the dollar store and use screwdrivers as my gouges, I want to set a box up and put a small motor in it. The mounting locations for the screws for that motor, the structure for the sliding mounts, and the positioning of all those components, I can lay out in MapMaker and make a blueprint that I can use for sticking down onto a piece of plywood, cutting it out with a jigsaw, and assembling what I need. Or I could even potentially use MapMaker to make a printable pattern that I can then use on a laser cutter at the makerspace to cut out kits that I could potentially sell for people to assemble for turning carrots into sculpture or whatever. You know, we could do a fair amount with this. And I do not think this was ever meant to do any of that. But if I can make it do it, that's more fun for me. I would have way more fun being able to make a limited piece of software do a bunch of things like that than I would in buying additional packets of stamps to do one more little gimmick that it doesn't come with the base model. I think I can make it do more than they have any idea it can do. So I think I'm going to have a bit of fun with that. And we're almost at an hour here. I should probably get ready for going to bed. I do still have some food to finish prepping and put away tonight. I got work tomorrow. I'm really thinking, like, I don't know how much longer I want to keep going to work like that. I just heard somewhere today that they're thinking that they've pushed the timelines out even further now. They're talking about June potentially for some of the things going back to normal. I don't know how much I believe that. I feel like it could go either way on that one. They might just drop everything too early, and they might go even further. I don't know which way they're going to go with this, so I don't know whether to believe them or not. But I feel like there are two things. One of them is if I took the chance to come on here and just focus more on my creations all the time rather than do it in my spare time around work, I could do a lot more here. But I also feel like if I could get past that little bit of reluctance to put huge amounts of effort into some things, I could make some really good stuff. Like I could probably have done something like this video tonight as a pre-recorded and edited video. If I 4.5 to 5 hours of time, I could sit down, use OBS, record myself up in this top corner here, and use the main window to show what I'm doing in OBS, fiddle around with it, demonstrate some of my thoughts and ideas, trying new things, and get about 4 hours of that content, and then spend maybe another 2 or 3 hours editing it down to a half-hour video. I could do that if I wasn't doing this only in my spare time. I could do it. Do I want to necessarily dump all that effort into editing the video? I don't know. I don't think the return on it just yet is up there. If it were my source of making a living, I might do something like that. But that's never really been the goal here. Yeah, I mean, we just recently got the option of wearing disposable masks. and they just installed some plastic shields over the cash register. The thing is, like, I'm still touching everything somebody puts through my line. I was like, you can put as many plastic shields as you want up. It doesn't stop the fact that I had a woman go through my line the other day. I'd seen her walking through the store stuffing food into her face the whole time. So her hands are like this the whole time. And then she has an armload of stuff she brings to the register. And with the same hands she's been stuffing food in her face, sets it all down on the belt. And I have to pick each one up, run it over the ringer, put it in a bag, and then hand it back to her. I'm still getting exposed to the germs. Like, and she's not any more protected than I am at that point. Like, if I have it and I'm working at a register, if she's going to behave that way, she's going to catch it. And then on her way out the door, she's going to touch that door handle and she's going to leave it behind for everybody else. We wipe everything down pretty regularly, and that to me is the more important thing that we're doing. We have a bottle of bleach water and paper towel, a spool of paper towels, and it's every shopping cart, every hand basket gets wiped down after every person who used it wants to put it back, and before everybody who wants to take it and use it the next time. So it gets really cleaned. The keypad that you use your credit card in is covered in a plastic bag with slits so that things fit in the right places. And well, I mean, there is a sneeze guard, but in this whole time, I have not had one person sneeze at me. I've not had one person cough in my general direction. What I have seen is somebody blow their nose on a tissue and then use those same hands to use the card in the thing. And it's like, So it's like, to me, the biggest risk vector is the contact and leaving it on surfaces. The other thing, depending on where you work, is if you do stuff in an area where people are particularly active, it's not just a cough or a sneeze, it's the moisture of your exhalation. So if I were to take a piece of clear something or other, and I don't think I have anything clear on here right now. Let's see, maybe this. That fog that's on there, I don't know if you can see it. That fog, every one of those is a droplet from the inside of my lungs. And those droplets can carry viral and bacteria contaminants. So as I exhale, especially a deep exhale, you get moisture in the air around you. That little cloud, it's not projected at you at 60 miles an hour from a front perspective. It's not a projectile attack, but it does create a miasma of particulate that are a risk factor, and they can remain airborne for a few minutes at least. That's a potential protector for wearing masks, because when you breathe out, it's still going to come around the edges or through the exhale. There's a valve on some of those masks, and they will let some of that out. But it's sort of like blowing around a corner. What you blow on isn't necessarily going to hit something. So it's just going to lose a lot of its projection of those particles. But it's still there, and it can still hang in the air. So those masks do have some value. The shields do have some value, but those particles also land on surfaces. So that exhalation cloud, that fog I put on this bag when I exhaled on it, there's still some of my cells and some of my microbiota from my internal biology, some of my beneficial bacteria that are now residing on that bag. Now, how long they can last on that bag depends on the different species of microbiota. But yeah, that exhalation settling on all those surfaces, you still need to wipe it down on a regular basis. So hitting everything that can come in contact with people, with bleach and water is the goal. Do not touch something and then touch your face. If it's on my skin, it's on my skin. It's not going to crawl from my fingertips to my mouth in the meantime. It's not going to find the scratch I have on the back of my hand if it's on the front of my hand. It's not going to migrate. But if I do this after touching somebody gross without washing with soap or a sanitizer of some kind, then it can spread it or move it around at the very least. And that's what you want to watch out for. So don't touch your face. Don't rub your eyes. But the other thing I will say is that exhalation cloud that we see and talk about, if you're behind somebody and they're breathing heavily, that cloud goes up. And if they move forward and you move through that same spot, you're moving through their cloud. And that's especially apparent with people who are exercising. So joggers, bikers, runners. Going to a gym would be a horrible idea. Even just walking through a place where somebody else has recently been breathing or whatever is a risk factor. So moving air is definitely a positive thing. Yeah, it's just there's a whole mess of things that, like, you can do some things that make your odds better of not getting sick, but they don't stop it from happening. They just make it less common. Yeah, there's a lot of things you can do, but the best thing for everybody is to stop going places. My friend that I see on a somewhat regular basis, he gets grumpy about it because he says things to the effect of, like, this would have been over. This could have been over in 2 weeks if everybody had just stayed home for 2 weeks. 2 weeks isn't hard. Stay home for 2 weeks. The infection time frame from getting infected and showing symptoms is about 5 days for a lot of people. Sometimes upwards of 14 days. If you get it and never develop symptoms, there's about a 3-week window before you can't give it to anybody again, is what I hear. So, like, if we had just all went into quarantine, just absolute, total, and complete quarantine, nobody goes anywhere for 2 weeks, there would be no more coronavirus. But we didn't do that. We can't feasibly do that. But if we had just done as much of that as we could have, it makes it near impossible for it to spread. And then if we had tested more regularly, so we could see which populations needed to continue to stay in quarantine and needed help to do that, that would have been so much easier. But now, because we have this not quarantine, it's going to last longer. But, I mean, for the most part, I'm reasonably not too worried about it right now. Our area is having a low level of risk still, because most of our area is still relatively rural. At least where I work is rural enough that there are only about 1,000 people in this state right now. And yes, our region of the state is the worst. But that's even saying in our county, I think there are less than 600 people who have been confirmed to have it. And our death number from it is still under 100 for our area. Not for the state, but for the county and town. And so, like, it's not a super, super high risk, but It's still not enjoyable. I just feel like at this point, part of like it's part of my excuse for why I don't feel like I should continue to do the job. But my other thing is like I don't know that I need to keep doing the work that I'm doing. But I've sort of been tethered to this job, and yeah, it's nice to have a ability to build a financial cushion up in case more hard times comes down the line, which I'm sure we're going to have. So being able to build that kind of stuff up and stock up on cheap supplies, like as an employee there, I'm there on the days that the truck comes in, and so I have access to certain foods that I can. I can't find some things in stores still because people are hoarding it. Like there's one day a week where I have enough time to make it to a grocery store on a day where they still have meat. If I go any other time during the week, after my shift or before my shift or on a weekend when I have a day off, they don't have it. They don't have any meat. The whole meat section is empty. But I work in a store, and I know that at the end of my shift, if there's 2 or 3 packs of things still left, I can purchase something on my way out. And I know I can get something on my way in on a given shift day if I need to. So it's like there's a slight advantage to doing that. I don't hoard anything because I don't have the same paranoid need that a lot of people apparently have had. I still remember people going through my line with 8 packs of 4 rolls of toilet paper. 8 packs of 4. How many rolls of toilet? Like, I still have the 2 4-packs that I had when this whole toilet paper shortage happened. I had 1 4-pack and I bought a 4-pack. 8 rolls of toilet paper. It's been a month. I've used 2.5 of those rolls. How much are you using on a given day? Like, what are you doing? And I feel the same way. Like, I know what I need to eat in the course of a day, and I know I probably have a different pattern than most people for some of that stuff. I know that when I get up in the morning, I can eat 2 eggs and 2 slices of ham, and that's a filling enough meal that it'll last me 4 to 5 hours. I can make any number of things for a lunch and a second lunch and then a dinner. And I have 4 meals in a day, and I've probably gotten my caloric needs for the day, but I haven't gone over it for the most part. And what I consume in a day, like I've noticed some of the things on the shelves, like a box of mac and cheese. A box of mac and cheese is 3 meals. It should be 3 meals. Most people eat 1 of those by themselves. And so you're eating 3 meals for 1 of your meals a day. And then you have a snack in the afternoon and a snack in the morning. And you have 2 other meals like that. You're eating 3 or 4 days worth of food in a go. It's not good for you. And of course, you're going to run out of food faster. Like, I went through an entire 2-week period of time where I was sick for a week, a little more than a week and 2 days. And I was self-quarantined, feeling miserable the whole time. So I didn't get as much done as I wanted to get done. But I went through that 2-week quarantine, 14, 18-day quarantine, and I had a food supply. By the end of that 2.5 weeks, I'd made it about a third of the way into my food supply, so I could have done 6 weeks on what I had for food. I don't get how people absolutely need to be going out on a regular basis for everything. Like, how are we still hoarding things? Like, you can't be out of meat. What did you all do with the meat you had? The store had enough meat for everybody for a week. How did you all burn through that all that fast? I just don't get it. I don't understand it. It's weird. And it's like, not only is how did you burn through all that so fast, but how are you all still getting all of the food so that nobody else can get it? Like, you must be eating 3 times as much as you usually do, and you usually eat 3 times as much as you need to be eating. Like, that's just insane to me. That's, yeah. It's like, I would much rather, like, I buy a can of something every day I work, or something to that effect, and I've sort of rebuilt my supply of things I ate for that 2 weeks. I don't have to hoard anything. And I could just as easily not go to work for 6 weeks and just not go anywhere. I don't have to pay for gas. I don't have to drive anywhere. I don't have to get food. I don't need water. I don't need to do anything other than that. I got enough. I could just be here for 6 weeks and work on all these things with the map maker. If you literally wanted me to try a new project every day with map maker, I could. I don't have to go anywhere. And I kind of want to do that. But I also know that I'm being a help in some ways to the people who need a store to be open and to be able to supply them with the things they need. And I care enough about my store and my fellow workers to want to know how they're doing. And I even care about my own customers. Like, I have been a little worried recently because regularly we used to get every weekend a busload of senior citizens from the local senior center. Yep. There definitely will be some of that going on. Yep. There will probably also be a higher number of divorces in the near future. I've seen people who cannot stand to be around the people they're married to, not after being stuck with them in quarantine. They just can't stand it anymore. But we used to get a busload full of senior citizens from the senior center once a week. It was their weekly outing to go get some new thing to do a project with, or cards to send to family members, or some crossword puzzles, or books to read, or things like that. I haven't seen any of them in 6 weeks, and I hope they're okay. And likewise, we daily got those. We usually get I want to say they're Easter seals, but there are immigrant populations taking care of special needs people. So you see a lot of people from I want to say the Tibetan region, Himalayan regions, and they are by far the largest population of people who take care of the special needs people in the area. And every day we'd have 1 to 3 of the special needs people come in to buy a coloring book, or a toy, or a puzzle to make, some snack food, a new box of crayons or markers for their creative projects, some construction paper, some stickers, like simple pleasures that these special needs people could take some joy in their daily life with, at a price that's not going to bankrupt them to have these activities and things to do. It's been 6 weeks. I have not seen any of them. I hope they're okay. That's all I can do at this point. I don't have a contact number. I can't reach out and check in on them. I want to very badly. I worry about them a little bit. And to a certain degree, this store provides me that contact. It, it connects me to my community, lets me check in on people, see how they're doing. But yeah, I mean, there's some things I want to be doing too. And yeah. All right, we are past an hour. I need to go. But I had a pleasant time talking with you. I will check in with you probably tomorrow if I'm not exhausted. Because one of the other things that's happening a lot right now is a lot of our employees are deciding they don't want to be employees right now. So they're disappearing. So I might end up getting more hours, which is counterproductive as far as I'm concerned. But it is what it is. I will potentially see you tomorrow and check in with you, see how you're doing, and maybe talk about some of the other projects I want to try playing around with. I do think it would be worthwhile to, like, I could hand draw. I almost guarantee you I could hand draw character faces and some of the map stuff faster. But if I draw the components for Map Maker, I could probably end up getting a lot of templates together enough so that I could bang out a new example each time, especially if I do that police profile face design software idea. All right, I'll catch you tomorrow with some more of that chit chat. Take care, stay safe, and have a good night.